Hi, this is Meagan Keane here with Avid Artist Relations, and I am here with producer Jon Landau at University of Southern California's School of Cinematic Arts in Los Angeles. And Jon is just about to start a Q&A with the students and alumni of USC. Welcome, Jon.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good, good. So if you could just start off talking a little bit about your role on Avatar, which is the film that you're going to be talking about today.
Well, my role was sort of all-encompassing on Avatar, from everything from working with Jim to get the movie greenlit, through the casting, through the production, and figuring out how to make the movie, and how to work with Avid to make sure that we could make the movie, and then all the way through the marketing with Fox.
So you just mentioned that you had a hand in deciding on what editing platform you were going with. How did that process happen?
Well, it really wasn't a decision for us. We knew we were going with Avid. We had had a great experience with Avid in the past. We found them to be very supportive of our needs. On this show, everything was digital. And we needed to have a system where we could put everything in HD. We relied on the ISIS and had a tremendous amount of storage, and multiple locations where we had parallel systems going, and it was very complex, and Avid was what we needed to do this movie.
So were there any other considerations that went into the mix because you were doing the film in HD this time around?
There weren't really that many considerations, but the other thing that Avid really played a big surprising role in was our visual effects review process. Weta Digital had their own system for reviewing visual effects, but as we got into the working methodology of it all, we realized that the Avid had everything we needed to do our collaborative visual effects reviews. So we would work on the Avid for these review sessions, and Jim was able to click down from one layer to another layer to another layer to see all the versions of past visual effects shots, and it made the process much more efficient.
And how was it working in 3D in Media Composer?
Well, we didn't actually work in 3D. We worked in 2D. Okay. What we did was we felt that to do the movie properly, we needed to do all of our creative decisions in 2D. And I think this is one of the misconceptions people have when they work in 3D. They think they've got to do things differently. They don't. Storytelling comes down to the same basic principles. So we edited in 2D, we mixed in 2D, and we made all the creative decisions that way. And it was only at the end, and it was actually the first time we saw the movie all the way through in 3D was 2 weeks before the movie opened.
Whoa. Wow. So what was your role as a producer? How much did you interact with, the collaborative process that goes into post-production with the editors and the sound team and all of that?
Quite a bit behind Jim's back. With Jim is actually, I find directors who, really are strong and have self-confidence, they enlist support. They know at the end of the day they're going to make the decision. So Jim, we would screen the movie, we would look at different cut scenes and throughout the process, because our process was interesting on Avatar. We started turning over cut sequences to Weta Digital 2.5 years before the movie came out. So we did it on a scene-by-scene basis. So Jim and myself and Steve Rifkin and John Rafua, the other editors, we had to look at these scenes and make sure that we were comfortable with them going in. And Jim always enlisted feedback at those points. So we did that, and then we started watching whole cuts of the movie actually about 1.5 years before the movie came out at various different stages. But thanks to the Avid, we were able to do that with things being on multiple tracks.
So it really was a collaborative process all the way through, it sounds like.
It was. Look, at the end of the day, Jim's the auteur. There's no question, about that. But, I think the way it works with Jim is, you can throw out an idea, and he hears everything. He might not listen in the moment, but as you work through a process, it seems to come through.
And so, in this process, how often were you all together, or did you work on a Unity system where people were in different places at different times, or how did that all work?
We had 2 different editing facilities. We had one in Malibu and one in Playa Vista, which is our stage was at. Mm-hmm. And in those situations, in Malibu, for example, we had probably 5 different editing rooms, where we would have assistants in one room, our 2 main editors in another room, Jim editing in the screening room where he was actually projecting the images up on the screen, but all Avid based. And the way Jim works also, he can't edit picture without dealing with sound. So he used sound and music quite a bit, and Jim would go in behind closed doors and he'd be in there cutting away for hours and hours on end, and we never knew what we'd come out with.
And so 3D, do you think it's here to stay? Do you think it's a passing trend? What do you think?
I think 3D is here to stay. I think it's going to take time for it to take hold, but I think ultimately all of our screens are going to become 3D, from our mobile devices to our computer screens. If you think about it, Windows or Macintosh right now is the poor man's version of 3D. Everything's still layered.
That's true.
You just don't really have it in 3D depth. We see our lives in 3D. If you look back historically at the evolution from black and white to color, that took a number of decades. We had color films in the 1930s. It really wasn't until the 1970s where color became ubiquitous. And the reason color became ubiquitous at that time in films was because television all reverted to color. So I think now we're seeing a trend in the home where there's 3D televisions for the home. So I think once we start getting more and more television shows in 3D, films are going to have to compete. So it won't just be the epic movies, it's going to be even the smaller ones, because I think it's even those moments of intimacy that play better and stronger in 3D.
And interesting that you say that you're able to do it in 2D, so you don't necessarily need to go 3D in the edit, but you can...
That's right. You know, we realized, especially on Avatar, that at the end of the day, more people would see the movie in 2D than in 3D.
Good point.
And, you know, you have to make the same decisions. You know, I remember screening some stuff for Peter Jackson, and Peter's first reaction was, oh, in 3D you're going to want to hang on that shot longer, because he loved the shot. And if you were just dealing with that one shot, he would be right. But you're not. You're dealing with the normal conventions of storytelling and filmmaking. And I was just meeting with Mark Webb, who's going to be directing the next Spider-Man, and we were talking about 3D process. I was really saying to him, it's really emphasizing the same filmmaking techniques. Depth of field is great in 3D, a shallow depth of field, because it directs the eye where to go, because what you don't want to do is you don't want the eye to wander. So use the same conventions you use in 2D filmmaking, and they apply directly to 3D.
Yeah, I definitely agree. So now you're about to go into a Q&A with students and alumni from USC, and why USC, John?
Well, I spent some time on this campus, 5 years in total.
Wow, okay.
And, you know, when I got a call to come back, I was thrilled and excited to be doing it, and thrilled and excited that Michael Pizer is going to be doing the question, because
Very cool.
Michael gave me one of my first jobs in the business. So, you know, when Michael calls, I show up, you know.
So what would you say to students who are wanting to get out and get into the industry? What's some advice that you would give to students trying to make that leap into their professional careers?
You know, I think, you know, have a passion, you know, don't try and rush things. If you're going to go do something, really take your time, and never lose sight that in this world where technology is always evolving, still come back to the story. Let the technology service a story and not, you know, the other way around. And don't be afraid to fail, because in art, you know, failure has to be an option.
And so in terms of the technology, why is that such an important thing to come out of school with?
Well, I don't know that. I think first and foremost, it's story. I think that's one of the things that USC does. While it provides you with all the tools that you can do it with, it's not like a typical trade school that focuses on just the task. Here, they also revert back and say, look, it's story, it's character, it's what are you doing with these movies? What are the themes that go into these? And I think that's what makes it special. And the technology, again, is for you to find the tools to tell the stories that, you know, couldn't otherwise be told.
So as important as the storytelling is, we all agree about that, the technology is obviously something that's important for students to come out with. Did you know that you can get a Media Composer system as a student for $295 right now?
I was surprised when I just learned a couple days ago that they had Media Composer available for students at below $300 for a 4-year program. I think that's great. I think that one of the things that you guys have to do is get that awareness out there, because, you know, if you could start working with the tools you're going to use in your career, it puts you that much further ahead. You don't have to learn new software. You're there, you're working in Avid Composer, it'll be great.
So how important would you say it is for students to really learn Media Composer while they're here in school?
I think it's extremely important. I think that, you know, one of the things that I remember through growing up around films is how I used to think that, you know, filmmaking was all just about the script, or then I thought it was all just about the direction. And then I realized at the end of the day, you know, the editing process is what ties all of these things together. And I think the better knowledge you can have about that, no matter what specific area you go into, it's going to be a useful tool to you in the film industry.
And so in keeping up with the changes in technology, of course, I'm hearing you say the storytelling,
right.
But in terms of the importance of keeping up, are there any blogs or magazines that you keep up with to keep your information coming?
You know, I do it through people. I think a people network is a much better way to do it. People who have actual hands-on experience. And that's really what happened on Avatar. You know, people look at Avatar and they get confused as to what the technological breakthrough was with the movie. They think it was the 3D. To me, it wasn't. To me, it was being able to create computer-generated characters that were engaging and emotive by going to an image-based facial capture process. I think that was the real breakthrough. And you know, we got there by looking at what Bob Zemeckis had been doing. We got there by talking to Rob Legato, who's a visual effects supervisor, and other companies who actually had hands-on experience and applying that. So I think that's better than reading any magazines you know, out there.
So what's next for Jon Landau?
What's next is a trip to Africa this summer with my
I'm
family.
jealous.
You know, something we always wanted to do, so I booked it a year ago. I said, no matter what happens, I wanted to book it in January. My wife said, you might not be done with the movie yet, so we pushed it to this summer.
Yeah, good thing. All right, well, thank you so much, and I'm looking forward to seeing the Q&A.
You're very welcome.